My name is Dawn Overstreet, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Church in the 21st Century Center. And I have the pleasure of introducing to you Carrie Cronin, a good friend of mine here, who teaches philosophy and theology in the Perspectives program, and I should mention is a BC grad, and works as an administrator in the Larnigan Center. So I believe a number of you already know Carrie. She wanted me to let you know that she doesn't normally have a foam latte mustache. That was just for the posters. And when I asked her to do that, I told her that I owed her one, and she said, no, you owe me like 3 for that one. I wanted to say that for those of you that are interested in getting involved in the Church in the 21st Century in various initiatives that we have specifically geared to undergraduates, please come up to me afterwards and I can tell you about what some of those areas might be. And because we have an active C21 council here today, those of them that are wearing the What Would Jesus Brew t-shirts, if you guys want to stand up where you are in the room, you can ask them about C21 stuff too. So, all right. Well, please help me in welcoming Carrie Cronin.
Hello. And thank you so much for coming. Tell me if you can't hear me. I'll just scream. Because I know that it's difficult for you to be out tonight because you have papers to write, and you have sleep to catch up on after your exams, and you have Facebooking to do, and you have elections to watch and all that. But I appreciate that you came out tonight to talk about this thing, going to Mass. But before I begin, I would like to say a couple of thank yous. First to Tim Muldoon and the Church in the 21st Century program for setting up this whole series. It's a great series. I think Tim is the kind of guy, I don't know him really well, but he seems to burst on the scene every morning, and he has a love of Boston College and Boston College students that seems steady and sure to me, and that's always a good combination. Second, I want to thank Dawn. Where did Dawn go? Dawn, who is a friend despite the fact that she made me wear the mustache, the foam mustache. That's evidence to show you that you should be very wary of good friends, because they make you humiliate yourself in front of people. So thanks for that, Dawn. Really, thank you for that, Dawn. So, but I can't think of anything I would rather humiliate myself for than my faith, and I am willing to humiliate myself to get you to come here to talk about your faith. So thank you for coming. I'd also like to thank the students who are on the C21 Advisory Council. A couple of them came by my office to take said picture of me with the foam mustache, and I didn't just happen to have a foam mustache that day. They had to bring a cup of whipped cream with them. They refused to actually put it on me, and I had to do it myself, but they did it with a lot of goodwill and humor, and I really appreciate it. And clearly they have plastered campus with this humiliating poster. I've been hearing about it for days, and I have luckily averted my eyes carefully and have not seen the poster yet. I can only look at it when I'm finished here tonight. So, but thank you to them because they've done a great job. So, the question here is Mass. Why do we go? What are we doing when we go? And this was a great question. I'm very glad that I was asked to think about this question with you, because it made me reflect on not just on my own practices of worship, but I think when you're asked this kind of question, it helps you to reflect on what people are doing when they're worshiping generally. So this isn't just a Catholic question, we know that, and it's not just a Christian question. It's interesting to wonder why we do what we do and why other people are doing what they're doing when they're worshiping. But at this point, I've only got enough time to kind of talk about my experience of it, so I'm going to tell you some stories. So there's part 1, stories, and then part 2, heavy theory. Not really, but okay, we'll start with part 1. Part 1 is very long, part 2 is short. Well, former students of mine know that's probably a lie. It's all long, but okay, so So here goes. In thinking about this talk, I thought, well, it might be helpful for me to think about my favorite masses, the best masses that I ever went to. So I started thinking back through my life to all the masses that I went to. And that, that starts with, I don't remember my baptism, but I'm sure I loved it. It was fabulous. I was a daughter born after 4 sons, so I'm sure everybody thought I was fantastic there. Then in 2nd grade, after First Communion, I became a cross bearer at St. Justin's Church in Hartford, Connecticut, and I loved being up on the altar, looking down at everybody. It was great. I loved that. But some of the masses that stick out in my mind are obvious ones, like wedding masses, baptisms, especially the ones where I'm the godmother. It's great to be kind of up there, center of things. Confirmations of my nieces and nephews, confirmation masses of classes that I've taught. Those are always interesting. When your confirmation class is receiving the gift of the Holy Spirit and you're thinking, thanks be to God, I never have to see them again. And God, it's all up to you because I don't know what happened in those classes. So those were great. Obviously, some of my favorite masses are a little different than other people's because I happen to have 3 uncles who are priests. 2 of my mom's brothers and my dad's brothers priests. So in my family, when you're at home, Mass can break out at any time. You're having a cup of tea, or you go out for a walk, and you come back, and there's Mass. It's Mass kind of in the living room, or on the deck, outside, or in the backyard. It's kind of happening all the time. So those are great. I mean, it's great to have Mass just on the coffee table. That's really fun. With 3 or 4 people and your uncle the homily becomes your uncle asking you questions about what you think about the scripture passage. That's really fun. Sometimes I've been to Mass just with my one holy roller uncle, and it's just me and him. That's super intense. And he makes me sing all 5 verses of whatever song it is. This is not good. But those are great. But I have to say, probably my top 5 masses. So I've thought about this. And I've been to a lot of masses, I gotta tell you. Probably one of my favorite masses was the Mass that was said when I was a junior here at Boston College. My grandmother had died, and my mom and my aunt and my cousin and I were with her when she died in her house. She was in a hospital bed in her living room. And she died about 4 in the morning. And we called my uncle, and he came over, and we said Mass as the sun rose with her body right there. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever been at. And she was there, present to me in a totally new way that was now completely connected to that Mass. And so that is probably one of my favorite Masses. Another great Mass that I attended was 2 Augusts ago. Where's Pete? In the middle of a field in Cologne, Germany, with 6 BC students, a Jesuit from BC High, me, and the Pope Benedict XVI. And there were 1.2 million other people there, but we ignored them. It was really fun. We had slept outside in this field all night praying that it wouldn't rain at World Youth Day, and it didn't. We had this amazing Mass experience with Benedict XVI. But the day before, we had Mass, just the 6 of us, on a tarp in that field with Father Kevin, this Jesuit from BC High, and that was equally beautiful. Another Mass that I really enjoyed was a Mass in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. I was there in 2000 with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Susie, who actually was my BC roommate. She was there to adopt a little girl, a beautiful little Vietnamese girl whose name is Helene O'Grady, and shockingly, and we went to Mass the first Sunday that we were in Ho Chi Minh City, and there I was at a Mass being said in a language I could not understand at all, standing next to my friend who had her brand new daughter, and it was spectacular. Made even more spectacular probably because the day before we had been at a Buddhist blessing ceremony for the baby. And I thought to myself, this is just a spectacular beginning of a faith journey for this little girl. And it was really moving to me to be there, even though it was hot as Hades and in August in Vietnam. Another great Mass experience, I'm getting to the end, don't worry, of my little stories. Another great Mass experience that I had was, and this may really actually be my top experience theoretically, because in 2001, the Lonergan Institute, which I work for, held a conference in Rome, so I got to go to Rome. And I went to Mass, my parents came, and I went to Mass with my parents at St. Peter's in Rome. And I'm sure some of you have been there, and it's stunning, it's gorgeous, it's spectacular, it's awesome. And we went to Mass, and my parents found 2 seats, and I opted to stand in the back because I'm young and vigorous and all that. And I stood in the back, and we prayed the Mass. I was standing among strangers, and yet I felt that they weren't strangers at all. And we were all praying in our own languages. And the woman next to me was Eastern European, and she felt her knees during the Mass and stayed there on her knees on the marble floor for the entire Mass. And I could really feel her prayers being joined to mine. And I have to say, at that Mass, I recognized what Catholic really means, that openness or that universality that we're talking about when we say that we're Catholic. And for me, that was an incredibly moving experience because I realized that my attending Mass, my going to Mass, was part of this large communion of saints, which included not only all of these people here, all people throughout the world who were praying this way and in ways that are similar to this, but also it was joined to people who've been praying this way throughout history and well into the future. It gave me this feeling of not only the transcendence of God, but more importantly, the immanence of God in our prayer, joined with each other. So in reflecting on some of these, my favorite Mass experiences, I realized that really going to Mass over these years, over all these years that I've been going to Mass, really is the story of my life now. Sometimes I went to Mass out of obligation when I was young. My parents made me go. There was no opting out. Then when I got to BC, I went to Mass. Let's face it, I was scoping guys. I mean, you know, hour and a half of like somebody standing right there that can't move, you know, that's good. Really get a good long look at them without, you know, being a stalker. Maybe, Mass stalker, I don't know. But still, I was there, right? I went to, when I lived on Newton campus, I went to Trinity Chapel over there. And then I continued on in St. Ignatius, in the basement of St. Ignatius on Sunday nights, and where the Father Jack and Father Don of my time, this was decades ago, were spinning fabulous homilies also, and the Sign of Peace went on for 35 minutes also. And it was the place to go to see people and be seen, maybe see certain people. So that was a good reason to go. And a lot of you, I know, a lot of you go there. And that is fantastic. And you go for good reasons and not so good reasons. And when you leave BC, you're going to say, wow, this isn't like going to Mass at BC. And when I left BC, I spent a lot of time thinking about what is it that I want from Mass? Sometimes I want solace or comfort from Mass. Sometimes I want community from Mass. Sometimes I want scope and guys from Mass. Sometimes I want inspiration. Sometimes I want great singing and, I don't know, some liturgical dance thrown in there. Sometimes I want silence. Sometimes I just want to get away from it all. But in looking back over my life in Masses, I realized that it's all good. That God has so been willing to meet me wherever I am at Mass. And I've gone to Mass raging at God sometimes too. Really pissed off and wanting to be heard. And that seems fine by God. That seemed really fine. And that reminds me of what Mass really is about. So let me get to the theoretical part, which could be short, it could be long, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. So what are we doing when we go to Mass? So some of you might not know. Some of you might be Catholic, some of you might not know, and what is going on at Mass? Well, I'm not going to go through the kind of formal lineup of Mass, but I'll tell you generally what happens. What generally happens at Mass is we open up with an introduction. It's kind of a welcoming, but it's trying to place ourselves in the presence of God. And following up on what I just said, putting yourself in the presence of God is really tricky because you have to figure out where you are first. Sometimes putting yourself in the presence of God means quieting it down. Sometimes it means waking it up. Sometimes it means you're pissing me off, but I'm here, so don't bug me. Sometimes it means I've got something to ask, and I'm putting it out there right now. So putting myself in the presence of God is what I'm doing at the beginning of Mass. What am I doing after that? Well, after that, I'm entering into Scripture passages. I'm entering into the teaching of the Church through Jewish and Christian Scriptures in which I find other people who've been trying to put themselves in the presence of God. And I find teachings from Christ about how to do that a little bit better every day. So that's what we reflect on. Then, after that, what we do is we try to get clear what we believe. We try to get it clear. Sometimes we're getting it clear in the homily. All the time, I'm getting clearer on it when I proclaim my creed. I'm getting clear on what I believe. Next, I take all the people I know who need prayers, and even the people I don't know who need prayers, and I put them in the hands of God. And I take them into my own heart. That's the next thing that happens. And then I enter into what, for a Catholic, is the most mysterious participation in God's love and grace that I know of. And I enter into it, and here's the trick. I enter into it not ever being able to fully understand what it is that's going on there. It's an odd thing. It's an ever striving to understand. To really participate in the transubstantiation and communion at Mass. And then after that, what we do is we thank God for that. And that's pretty much what Mass is. That's what we do. Oh yeah, and in there is singing and kneeling and standing and sitting, and now there's like genuflecting or bowing, reverencing, you know. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And sometimes there's more hoopla, and sometimes there's less hoopla. That's how I kind of assess the difference between going to Sunday Mass, more hoopla, and daily Mass, maybe at St. Mary's, less hoopla. But always there's this presence of God, and I'm trying to get there. And what I think, well, what I've heard from students, I've also been asking students, what about Mass? What do you think about Mass lately, so that I could have something to say? And here's what I hear. It's very shocking. It's a whole new thing. Mass is boring. Oops. Mass is boring. All right, maybe Mass isn't boring here. Father Jack's fantastic, but when I go home, Mass is boring. And I'm just going to give you one secret, because I used to think Mass was boring too. A couple of years ago, oops, no, it was a long time ago now. It was many years ago. I'm old. I keep forgetting how old I am. All right, it was a ways back. I started to say the rosary. You hear the rosary, the little beads, they're not just what Madonna wears for like an accessory. I started praying the rosary, and the rosary is a great meditative prayer. And what the rosary did for me was it made me realize that the repetition of Mass isn't just because they can't think of anything else to do next week. The repetition of the Mass is meditative. It's a meditation on the sacrifice that's being celebrated there. And so the meditative practice of the rosary, and I'm not saying that it's the only one, there's lots of meditative practices, but the meditative practice, the devotional practice, helped me attend Mass better. It helped me get Mass a lot better. It helped me kind of see what was really happening. That what I think is happening is we're leaving the ordinary order of the world. Because the ordinary order of the world is get up, eat a Pop-Tart, go to class, talk to somebody, go to another class, go to the library, right? Vote, whatever. But to step outside of that ordinary order into an extraordinary order, into the order of the Mass. The order of the Mass, I think, is a way to say, it's time to recalibrate my life, to look at it again. A former student of mine, graduated a few years ago, just said to me the other day, Mass has become kind of the way I close out my week and start again, try it again, try to live that again. A life of holiness means we've got to recalibrate all the time. Recalibrating on once a week or even every day is great. Recalibrating means stepping out of my ordinary order into an order that's different, that sets a new kind of a standard, and that makes me keep the main thing the main thing. This is my last point. I just went to a Mass recently that's going to be up there in my top 10 Masses. I went to Mass, this was about 10 days ago, with a good friend of mine here at Boston College. He had lots of reasons not to want to go to Mass. Lots of reasons. He hadn't been to Mass in a long time. He had lots of reasons not to want to be there. But the silent undertow of God was leading him back to Mass. And as I sat there with him, I could think of all the reasons that he wouldn't want to be there. But I knew that God was drawing him back. And that's more important than all those other reasons that we could come up with for not coming. And it made me remember that Mass is seriously not an ideology. It's not an ideology. It's not a club. It's not a club like you could check off all the rules of membership and then you're in. It's not a course. It's not a class, although you really might learn something there. It's just a particular and unique moment when God reveals himself. Not that he's not revealing himself at other times, but when he's really intensely revealing himself. And now that I think about it, now that I've had to give this talk and think about it, I realize he's revealing something to me about myself when I think about my life as the story of Masses, going to Mass. They're going to Mass now. You're ruining my big climax. Okay, so my big climax is that God's not only revealing himself there at Mass, but I'm being revealed. He's revealing and illuminating something about me, something about what I'm seeking, what I'm bringing to the table. And he's revealing something about why I'm there to me. And for that, I am intensely grateful for the liturgical practices of my faith. And I hope that you're finding these same kinds of things in whatever tradition, whatever practices you're engaging in. And that's all I have to say. But I want you to give me some comments, some feedback, and some questions. That would be good. And you can clap for me. Could you hear me? I realized that I wasn't really talking down like that. I would like to hear your favorite Mass stories, too. Is that so, like, squishy, or I don't know? What's your favorite Mass story? I don't know. Or favorite worship story generally from another tradition? That would be great.
Oh, sure. Well, I was actually at the Papal Mass, not in Cologne, but in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
And so...
Oh, it did rain, I heard.
Oh, it rained. But it was one of the most amazing experiences because right as the Pope came up to start his homily, like, literally, the skies parted and the sun came down. Excellent. And then he started talking about the light of the world and, like, it was like, oh, that's not ironic. But, so that, great experience, go to World Youth Day, it's awesome. But I was wondering, something that I really carried away from that experience was just the universality in the sense that I could look all around me and see millions of people and see just for the first time, I think, really in my life, like right in front of me, like the body of the church, in a sense, that was very tangible, but not at the same time. And from your experience, what you took away from it seemed to be a little bit different. Could you comment on perhaps what it was like being there for you and why you think there might be that difference, in the sense that, like, I saw this huge number of people and that really touched me, but you saw a very small, like, it had a small experience in a large group.
Within the large context.
Yeah.
That's a great question. What is your name?
Katie.
Katie. That's a great question. Oh, I should probably not hold this, I'll get feedback.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I think that's a great point. I think probably because when I went to World Youth Day, I had previously had that experience in Rome at St. Peter's, and I was expecting it in Cologne, but what I wasn't expecting was to experience with a group of students and this Jesuit this feeling of utter amazement within the context of that larger amazement. I think that was definitely there for me. I mean, World Youth Day, if you haven't ever seen pictures of it, it's Woodstock style. I mean, you haven't showered. It's really quite gross. But, and you sleep outside, and the Pope like comes in on a helicopter. It's very strange. Like Jimi Hendrix, right? I mean, you guys are too young to even appreciate that. That's sick. Okay, but when that happens, I think that's absolutely true. And as I wasn't there as a youth, I was there as an elderly observer. I always said I was the elderly observer. I was the chaperone. But it was an incredible experience to see that the body of Christ, especially the young body of Christ. I mean, this was, at World Youth Day, you've got 1 million people, and they're sleeping outside in a field praying. It's not a Saturday night in the mods after a football game. I mean, it's well, maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't been outside after. Maybe it is. That would do my heart good. But they're singing Christian songs. There's Christian rock bands. It's a whole scene, and it was intense. And yet I had that small experience too. So I think you're right. I think there is that experience of, oh my goodness, this is what the communion of saints is like, right? That's it. But I also experienced that same idea when my grandmother died, and we were right there. I experienced the communion of saints. I said, I get it now. I get it. I get what that is. But that's a great experience. And it rained on you guys. It didn't rain on us. Even though we had garbage bags like galore, in case it did. That's great. Anybody else? Come on. Oh. She's leaving.
You talked a little bit about your transition to Mass outside of BC. I was kind of wondering if you had any struggles finding a parish, or like, because I'm a senior and moving on next year, and kind of worried about finding a Mass that will give me the same things that I get out of Mass here.
Yeah.
And I want to know if you had any troubles or how you found a community.
You know why that's a great question? It's because I was supposed to say that was part of the talk, but I forgot that paragraph. So thank you. Excellent. You're in charge of the microphone now. So here's what happened to me when I left BC. I moved into an apartment with a couple of girls, and with two girls, and they're best friends, but they hate each other after 2 years. But you know how that goes. So one of them was not religious in any way, but the other was Catholic and was a devout Catholic. She'd gone to Holy Cross, and but somehow had retained her faith. Now it's a wonderful school. So no, you should hear the things she says about BC. It's a travesty. So we spent 2 years, the first 2 years we lived together, looking for a parish. Because we had both had these amazing experiences in college. And therefore, I can give you directions to just about any church or in the area. I must have gone to 20 churches. And, we'd go to one church and say, no, go to another church maybe for a few weeks. And we were looking for a church that fit. We weren't looking for it to mimic college. We knew we wanted something else. We were ready for something else. We weren't exactly sure what it was. And actually the way that it ended up happening was I had studied the works of Bernard Lonergan when I was here as an undergrad and then in grad school. And I stopped at a church on Mass Ave out in Lexington one day. I went in, it was a very small church. There weren't any kneelers, so I thought, this is Catholic? I don't know. But it said Mass, so I hung around. And in fact, it was a Catholic church, and I stayed for the Mass, and the homily was about Lonergan. It was all about Lonergan. It ended up being, there was a priest who taught here at BC, and I didn't know him, but I sat in the pew thinking, okay, I get that. I got it, I'm on it. Thanks, God, that was helpful. And I go to that parish. That's my main parish now. I mean, I go to other churches also. I go to St. Clement's sometimes down in the Fenway. Although that can be sometimes Scope and Guys too there, but that's different. But see, at Sacred Heart in Lexington, there's no Scope and Guys. But I'm really going to Mass for all the right reasons. But in Lexington, I've taught confirmation classes there. God help me. I've been a parish council member there. And I love to see, parish life is fantastic. And I don't want you to be afraid of it. It's, maybe the experiences you've had of parish life in the past have been not so exciting, not so inspiring. I really feel like I haven't talked to this side of the room much. I'm like tending toward this. But you guys are more important, really. Don't feel, these guys, I don't know, they've had enough. But parish life is something really, you got to find a parish that fits. And this was a small parish. I really like that. I love St. Ignatius, but I felt like driving to St. Ignatius was like coming to work. So I didn't want to do that. Sacred Heart in Lexington for me was a great parish because, and I've enjoyed going there because I see the same people at 10 o'clock Mass every week, and I've seen kids growing up there. I realize, I was telling my class the other night that there's a woman in the parish who adopted these two little girls from Central America a number of years ago, and I realized that I've watched these two little girls grow up. And I remember when this woman, as a single parent, adopted these 2 little girls, and she had them in these baby carriers, and everybody was trying to help her. And now these girls are, preteens, kind of running around, getting involved in the youth group, and that's a great thing. I really enjoy that. And you are probably that for somebody back at your home parish. Maybe they don't know you, but they've watched you kind of growing up through the parish. And that's something that I really value now. You might not be right there yet, but the point is, it's worth spending the time looking, finding a place where you really feel like you fit. And it's entirely possible, because God is in all those places, but your community is going to be in one of those places. Does that make sense? I was down the Cape this summer, and there was at a parish outside of Falmouth, there was a kind of rock and roll mass. I didn't know it was the rock and roll mass, but I showed up, and when you see the drum set and you're thinking, oh, or maybe you're thinking, yes, the drum set. I don't know. Mine is kind of, there have been times in my life when I just have loved that. I've just so gotten into that. Right now, that's not where I am. But I love that my parish offers it for young people who are into it. As far as I can tell, and World Youth Day kind of helped me with this, Christian rock has just gotten so much better in the past 5 years. I don't know if you're following this at all. I mean, before it was, we could call it Christian rock, but no, it was just bad music parading around as rock and roll. But in the past 5 years, it just seems to be just actual music and really good. So I think I see a change in that. So maybe when I see the drums now, I won't, But I think again, it's where people are at, and it's very Ignatian, right? To kind of you gotta reach people where they are, and why people are coming, God already knows. So, and I don't think God's worried about it. So I think it's fantastic that it's on the move. And I know there's a lot of movements. Just coming to the top of my head, I've never attended a Life Teen event, but I've heard they're fantastic. Things like that where people are really supplementing and supplementing liturgy in ways that are really worshipful and reverential, not just entertainment for the sake of entertainment. I don't know, what do you think of it? What do you guys think of it? You're the ones it's aimed at. I mean, you have to admit, at some youth masses or youth services you've been to, it's kind of creepy, right? Like adults who are thinking, this is what the teenagers will like. Right? I don't know. You experienced that. You know what that's about, right? I mean, it's better when we kind of hand it off to you, I think. I don't know. Anybody had any really good experiences with that? There's something really cheesy about some of them, you gotta say. Anybody else have a favorite? Oh, way loud, way loud. She's involved in Life Teen. Great.
And I love it. The kids are amazing. Oh, that's talking though.
Now you've got the mic. Yep. See, I wore a foam mustache. You got to use the microphone.
Okay. Is it okay?
Oh,
yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm a core member at a Life Teen program, and the kids that don't enjoy regular Mass, seeing them get into the Mass and actually enjoying it is what makes it so good for me.
Right.
So I like those programs.
That's a great thing, and I have to say, as a Catholic who's been involved in Catholic education, not just in schools but in parishes, in CCD programs, I have to say, I give total props to Christian churches, non-Catholic Christian churches, because they're light years ahead of us in terms of youth ministry and all of that. And we've got so much to learn, and we have learned a lot. And I think movements like this are really kind of where we're finally catching on. We're finally getting it. So that's great. Anybody else? How about somebody from another tradition? Anybody who's from another tradition who's willing to speak up? Or, there we go. You gotta take the microphone. We gave you the free dessert, you have to take the microphone.
Okay.
No? Try that.
Okay.
Oh, that's nice.
My dad is Catholic and my mother is formerly Episcopalian, and we go to both services. It just kind of happened like that from when we moved to a different parish. But you were talking about the transubstantiation and how you just kind of don't know what's going on.
Oh.
I mean, and I know you do know what's going on. But
I mean, fundamentally, I know a little.
Yeah, I trust that. But just coming from the two traditions where, one just says that it's a symbol and the other one says that Jesus is actually the bread.
Right.
Maybe now that you're older, you have more clarity on it, but when you go to Mass and when you were younger, what did you do with that part of the Mass? Because it is such kind of mystical part, and when I was really little, I toned it out because I just didn't know what was going on.
Right.
But now I think about it, and I just without being irreverent, I just wonder what are Catholics who don't fully take hold of it at the moment, what do we think on during that part of the Mass?
Right. I'm going to say something, but I'm much more interested in what you guys have to say about this. I have to say, for many years, and still even at different times, I'm thinking, wow, that's huge. I don't know what to do with it. But for the most part, I am fully and actively and exuberantly excited not to know everything about it. In this sense, I am always praying to understand it more, and knowing that the more I try to delve into that mystery, and I hate to do the mystery cop-out thing, but the more I understand about it, the more beautiful and less understandable, not intelligible, but understandable, it becomes to me. Because when I receive communion, for me, it is absolutely intense that Christ has entered into my life in not just a symbolic way, in a real and very profoundly present way. And hopefully that means for me that when I'm going up there to communion, I'm asking God to help this change me always, to help turn my heart, from a rock to a real heart of flesh. Do you know what I mean? And that real presence, the real presence of Christ, means that something is happening, not just anything or something big is happening. Not. I don't want to say that it's nothing. Yeah. For me, that's what I meant when I said, the order of the Mass is to make sure that I'm keeping the main thing. And the main thing is, I'm believing all these things, and they're absurd. And the absurdity is spectacular. And I am in both awe of it and really excited to know less and less about it. What's that? For paradoxical statements. What else would you guys say about that, Christian? Well, speak up. Oh, Got to flip it all the way to the red.
Do?
Yep.
Okay. I guess what I was just going to say was that as far as the mystery aspect of the Mass goes, I suppose what I feel like I really appreciated about that, specifically, that aspect of the Mass was just the fact that, like, it can be a cop-out to say that something is a mystery, but the way it sort of seemed to me, and the way it was sort of explained to me, was in the way that it's sort of like, it's to say that you can't understand it completely is accurate, just because it's like, but it's not as if there's nothing there. Like, you can grab onto a rock and you can grab onto a mountain, but I mean, you can hold the entirety of the rock in your hand, the mountain not so much.
Right.
And so there is something there there is something there. It's just much bigger than something you could get to the entirety of, perhaps even in a single day, I mean, and just the fact that no matter how much of yourself, that you can pour the entirety of yourself, or I feel like I can pour the entirety of myself into the Mass and into trying to understand that mystery and still not really fully succeed, to me is comforting, just because it means that in that mystery there's room for me and then some. I mean, it's just sort of the way I felt about it, I suppose.
That's great. You want to pass it back?
I would have...
Oh, you're going to have to turn it on.
There we go. I would have actually two small suggestions for it. One, a book that I read over the summer in some ways absolutely changed the way I look at the liturgy, and it's Pope Benedict's The Spirit of the Liturgy. It's an incredible book, sometimes a little too conservative, but you can move past that because there are some profound thoughts in there about understanding and not necessarily understanding, but seeing what happens at the moment of transubstantiation, what happens in that moment of the Mass, and how that the altar becomes a focus of great cosmic forces, and at the same time it's very concrete, and it is very particular and very much there. And then my second suggestion, this was something that my grandmother actually taught me. She started doing this. She actually had an experience. She was kneeling in prayer in our chapel, and she actually had some type of a vision. I will call it a vision. She saw the dead body of Christ lying on the altar. And that can be a little frightening, but she said it did help her to make everything concrete. And so sometimes if I find my mind drifting during Mass, that's something I will try to do, is I will try to visualize the actual body of a man lying on the altar, and to see the deep humanity of Christ that's present in the sacrament.
Right. I do think I'll echo that. That I've read a fair amount of Pope Benedict's writings now, and he's a wonderful theologian. He's an intense theologian. He's a powerful theologian, and his writings are fantastic. They're accessible. I mean, they're serious and they're dense, but I think they're accessible and they're helpful. Does anybody else want to add to this? The idea of anybody else? Well, okay. Oh, well, sure. You couldn't have asked for the microphone when it was back there. Just kidding. Sure, offend the audience members. That's a good plan.
I think when it comes to Mass, one of the things that I find a lot of people have difficulty with when it comes to not appreciating it or having trouble is that they develop an expectation that okay, I'm going. The preacher is going to tell me my life story, or the music. I'll just be able to sing my heart out, or some spiritual experience I've had before in my life will repeat itself, or something of that nature. And I think a lot of, in fact, one of the struggles of my life has been an expectation of Mass that, oh, it's going to be like what it was in high school, which I loved my home parish. And I think that if you expect God to keep reaching you the same way He reached you when you were a high schooler, you're never going to grow up.
Right.
And I think what has to be done is that you have to be willing to say, I'm going to go to Mass. I might not like this part of it. I might completely miss this other part of it. I might not have any appreciation for a full like a full half of it. But if I try to be attentive to the fact that God might be saying, pay attention to this part now, or grow this area of your faith, or try to find this new part of your vocation. And I think that that can, first off, reveal the depth of the liturgy. Because a lot of people dislike the liturgy because they think it's very an inch deep. Mm-hmm. But I think it's because they've always been looking in the exact same place in the liturgy every time. Mm-hmm. And it's time to go elsewhere in the liturgy, because it's a very, very wide, and it also is very deep if you're willing to
I agree.
search.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think I can reiterate my own thought that part of the reason that I talked about, at different times in my life, I was looking for different things, and I am still experiencing that. That what I'm looking for in my meditative practices, in my prayer life, and in my life at Mass, literally, I think you're right. I think you should expect it to change. Nobody told me that. I think it's like anything important in your life, right? I think, and in terms of, some of you know that every once in a while I give a talk with some other people on dating and sexuality, and I think you should expect that to change. That's going to change too. Your desires are changing all the time, and so it only makes sense that our spiritual desires are changing all the time as well. And I think you're absolutely right. We should expect it to change. And we should be looking for the ways that we're led. Because I really do believe that, in my class recently, we're having this ongoing discussion about how God spoke to people in the Old Testament. And some students were saying, yeah, but God spoke to them, and He's not speaking to us. And I said, well, right, if you're waiting for like the, hey, you kind of thing, but that's not what they were saying, and that's, God is leading us all the time and speaking to us all the time, and so we should always be expecting to be led in different ways, and that's why I absolutely agree with you that looking for that next level. In the Church in the 21st Century recent newspaper, the Resources newspaper, there's a great article about faith development. There's been so much work done in the past 50 years on faith development. Lots of people know all about this, sitting over here. And the faith development, and we know a lot about faith development of people at your age, and so, but the idea is that you got to expect development to actually kind of to find it, to kind of ride that wave, and so I think, really enjoying one kind of a Mass, like now as a high school student or as a college student, isn't necessarily going to be where you're at in a couple of years. So what is it that I'm really looking for in communion, communion in that formal sense of the word, and in communion in terms of community with the body of Christ being the people of God? Like, what are my expectations, and how do I want that to grow and develop? Wow, I'm spinning now. Okay, stop. Somebody else? Oh, we're stopping. Woohoo! You have to get to the library. I'm sorry I talked so long.